Hello, this is Max Drake. I want to carry on from my overview on smart homes. One of the important things is connectability. Now, I just want to tell you the story of how I progressed through and basically tripped over myself on every single stage of setting up. And so I made so many mistakes, you suddenly end up realizing you actually have a reasonably good learning experience on the whole thing. Another thing I'd neglected to do on the previous video was to actually talk about the Zigbee connection. So when you get devices, you can either have a Wi-Fi device, or you can have a Bluetooth device, or you can actually have a Zigbee devices. And what do all of those things mean? So there are other ones. There's one called Z-Wave, but I'm not going to talk about this bit on time. So when I first got my bulbs and things like that, so the first thing I went out and bought 3 bulbs. And I got those, and I was pleased with them. Then I actually bought the switch, the on-off switch for heating the water, and then I bought the power switch. And I basically had those 5 items for quite a long period of time. Oh, sorry, and also bought 1 plug just to play with that. When I started off, I ended up having a mesh system, router system. So the mesh router system says you can actually have 2 discrete frequencies or channels. You've got the 2.4 channel, 2 discrete frequencies, but the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz, but the device chooses which one you connect to. So if I walked into the house, came into the house and I got the phone, it's going to try and connect me straight away to the 5G. Now my router sits here at this point in time, so I'm trying to keep it as central to the house as possible. I happen to have a bookshelf here with a plug, so that's quite handy, and so it gives a reasonable distribution all the way through. So when I tried pairing a couple of these things off, you need to be on the 2.4 gigahertz channel. Now you can in the setup, in my router setup, it let you have the dual channels so that you could try and pick one. So it would let you sort of, if you kept on selecting it and unselecting and selecting it, it finally let you sit on the 2.4 G channel. So when I started to pair with the bulb and it started to flash and then it connected to 2, as soon as I put the password in for the device, it would suddenly jump into the 5 gigahertz range and then wouldn't pair. So one of the suggestions somebody else had, I've seen a few people on the video said, oh well, because the 5, if you've got a certain distance and it's 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, that means you've got 2.4 humps, and then in the same distance you've got 5 humps. So that's the 2.4 and the 5 in the same distance. So the 5 is a high frequency, so it works better in near distance, and then when you get further away, the high frequency doesn't work as well, but the low frequency does. It's like high frequency sounds and low frequency sounds. The low frequency sounds carry a lot further. So people were kind of going and getting a light bulb onto a lampshade and taking it on an extension cord outside the house, so they knew the phone would only connect to the 2.4 G part of the mesh the mesh router's Wi-Fi channel would be the 2.4. Then they pair the bulb, then they bring it back in again. And so I even tried that to get some of those things, but I found I was very frustrated. In the end, I actually came across this gentleman here, and he goes through it very, very slowly and very carefully of how to connect any 2 routers. So I had an older router when I went to the mesh router, and I connected the older router that had 2 distinct channels, the 2.4 that you could log in, so I could actually have it 2.4G house, and the other one was 5G house. So one was a 2.4 channel, so once you were on there, it wouldn't suddenly jump onto the other one, it would just stay on that one. So I ended up pairing the 2 routers together. So the first one I left in the living room, the second one I put, unfortunately, right in the very far corner in the bedroom, just because I had the shelf and a PowerPoint there. And so I paired them up. So for the light bulb, so it was in this far corner, and I had 1, 2, 3 light bulbs, and the smart switch for the hot water cylinder, and this power meter through here. And what I was actually finding, the bedroom one, the toilet one, the hot water cylinder one seemed to work, and this other one seemed to work quite well. But every time I pair the kitchen bulb, it would pair for a while and then it would drop off. And I think it was too far away from the router. So what I ended up doing was I moved the router into the attic space of here. So my house is a timber house. So if we just go through and go into the cut, it's just a timber house. So anytime I was trying to send a signal through into the other one, the signal from this room was going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe even 7 walls. So the signal was definitely degrading by the time it got to this point here, and the bulb just seemed to be weaker than the power meter which I had at this point, and the bulb just kept on dropping out. So by moving my Wi-Fi to the attic, moved it into a more central location, and suddenly I had great connectivity on this bulb, and I had no problem. Once I set it all up, I was doing it. So that was great to the point. But then when I started to add some more devices, I added another plug, I added the curtains, I added another switch here, I added a bulb in the thing, one in the back, and then I added all of these sensors all the way through there, but they're part of another. The obviously the signal strength started to drop off, and it started to drop off here. So this one here, the bulb still worked fine, but this one here, this meter, kept on falling off suddenly. So I had to do something like that. So I ended up putting a range extender in. So in my original setup, I had the 2 discrete bands, the 2.4 and the 5 here, the router that I had. And in the bedroom, I was actually getting poor reception. So I tried using an extender, and it sort of worked, and it sort of didn't. And in the end, I just sort of suffered through poor reception at this point in time. When I ended up with the mesh, it seemed to be a lot better, and I was quite happy with it. And when I ended up with the Wi-Fi in here, it ended up even better. So I could just connect straight into that one there. So I ended up using my Wi-Fi extender through there. Now, when you connect a device to you pair it through your phone, and you pair it, if it's a Wi-Fi item, it will have its own IP address. So this one here will be 192.168.1.35 or 40 or 80 or 100 or whatever. So each unique device. Now you can take the batteries out of it, and you can say forget me, and then you can put it back in again. It usually remembers it by its ID, and then it'll reconnect based on that Wi-Fi address that it's got. So that works for all of those things, and each one of those has their own separate IP as long as it's a Wi-Fi enabled, it's a Wi-Fi device. So suddenly having all these Wi-Fi devices suddenly saying talk to me all the time, so they're continuously connected. Like on your computer, if you look on your router, it will actually have a unique IP address for your computer. But when you close the computer down, it suddenly says, no, I'm not connected to the internet anymore, so therefore I'm not demanding anything, demanding that connection stay there. Even if you're sending something over the network or not, you're still connected by Wi-Fi when you log on. So all of these devices are on all the time, and at times, maybe I've got the computers on and things like that, and there's a lot more demanding things happening. And then your signal strength drops a bit, and then things start to fade through the edges, and that's all you can do. So suddenly I get this issue here where they suddenly become unavailable. They're not connected, so you've got to go back and repair the device with the phone again. So this is one here where I put an extender. Now, when I ended up with the second router, I ended up creating this Drax Obi is the one, it's my combined mesh router. So it's one, so it'll choose whether you go onto the 5 or the 2.4. The Drax is a 2.4 gigahertz connection on the second router that I've got. But when you put an extender on, you then have to connect to, you cannot have the same Wi-Fi address. So you've got to give it another address. So this is why this is called Drax Extend. So this device here does not connect back to my router in the attic space through here. It connects to my extender. So therefore, what it's logged into is the Drax-Extend extension is the one that is connected to. So that one's connected to the extension, and this bulb here is actually still connected to the Wi-Fi, but I might actually connect it to the extension. Maybe that would be better because it's closer in. So that's the Wi-Fi connection, and then I've sort of hobbled something together. So I want to see, I'm going to start putting some motor curtains up into here and just seeing if they work fine, but I think because it's quite local it should be okay. The other thing is because it's in the attic of my house. Oh, sorry, now I've got to click it there. In the attic, the walls only go up to the ceiling in my house, so therefore having the Wi-Fi router up here means I'm not going through as many walls to actually get to the light fitting, so it's a lot. It ends up having a better extendability. So each device, every single light bulb that is a Wi-Fi bulb will connect to the router with its own IP address. Now the second system that we talk about, and one of these devices through here, is we talk about Zigbees. So as I said, you can buy a Bluetooth device, a Bluetooth bulb, you can buy a Wi-Fi bulb, or you can buy a Zigbee bulb. So the Zigbee bulb have the same notion of the Wi-Fi router and things connecting to it, but they connect to a thing called a Zigbee hub. So this thing here is a little Zigbee hub, and it has a little USB-C connection here, and it has a button just for pairing, and once it's paired, so this just runs all the time. It has a USB-C Type-C cable that's just into a phone charger, so it needs that to power on all the time. So when you get one of these, you pair this to your router. So you pair it as you normally do through your app, and it will connect and it will give it an IP address of its own. But when you then pair a sensor, a battery sensor through here, it pairs, that doesn't pair to the Wi-Fi, to the Wi-Fi router, it pairs to the Zigbee hub. And so if I get another one, that pairs to the Zigbee hub. And if I get another one here, that pairs to the Zigbee hub. So all of them pair to the Zigbee hub, and the Zigbee hub then talks to the router. So if I'm sending something up to the Tuya cloud, as everything is going up to the Tuya cloud, the sensor takes the data, it sends it to the Zigbee hub, that sends it to the router, that sends it up to the cloud. So this is usually, because these are all just sensors, it's a sort of a one-way system. But you can also get powered ones through here. So again, when I located my Zigbee hub, I located it up in the attic at the same point there. Now, most of the idea behind the Zigbee first of all runs on exactly the same frequency as your Wi-Fi at 2.4 gigahertz. There's another one called Z-Wave, which is a European one, and that runs at an 8. I've got a number of 888, so most probably 888 megahertz or something, but it's below the frequency of the Wi-Fi, so it's not fighting the same one, where the Zigbee is still using the same frequency for talking to its own devices as well. Now the idea behind the Zigbee is that we only send a little bit of information at a time, and then we almost go into a deep sleep. I talked about the deep sleep on the microprocessor, and it seems to do that system. So the Zigbee thing is very good for low powered devices which are battery powered. So the really nice thing about that is that a lot of these devices, if they're battery powered, retrofitting them into an existing house is fine. You don't actually have to have cables going everywhere or connector plugs or anything like that. But where we ended up having the initial router, which is the mesh router, which we couldn't really use, we daisy chained off using an Ethernet cable to connect a second router so that they would join together via an Ethernet cable between them. So you need the cable to talk between them. And then we ended up with, for my one here, this one's got the Wi-Fi, and then the extender just takes the Wi-Fi signal that it gets here and tries to boost it locally a bit. And so that's done over Wi-Fi. But basically, the three routers are connected together but only this central one here and this one here are receiving and connecting to our devices, because they're the only ones which are totally in the 2.4 gigahertz ranges, and we're connecting to our DRAX and the password for DRAX on this one and this one here to DRAX extension -extension, and then the password for that. With the hub one, when you actually connect one of these devices up, you just go onto your Tuya app and you say do. So it's connecting. You've got to be on your 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi on your phone. You connect in with this one here and you do the connection, and then it says, what do you want to associate this with? I say, I want to associate it with my house. They said, no, I want to associate this with the Zigbee hub. So therefore, this becomes a sub-device into this Zigbee ecosystem. So whereas we got the Wi-Fi ecosystem, which is connecting all the Wi-Fi bulbs and things like that, this is connecting to the Zigbee system. So this is connecting to the hub. Now, an interesting thing with the Zigbee system, which is quite smart, is it has this sort of meshy interconnectability thing, is that I don't have to directly connect to a Zigbee thing. So if I had a Zigbee plug, and I thought this was a Zigbee plug, but I've since changed my mind and decided it isn't. If it's actually got power, you know, like a plug socket will actually have the power there. So it's got independent power instead of a battery, or sorry, it's got dependent power rather than a battery, which is independent. It can actually act as a sub-hub. So instead, for these sensors here, instead of sending a signal to the Zigbee hub here, they can maybe send it to the plug, which would then send it to the Zigbee. So they act as a sub-hub of the Zigbee thing. Now, the ones that I was finding was starting to errors, I was actually having some problems with things up at this end. Now, my porch sensor seems to be working fine for some reason, because I think there's this sort of direct line of sight through here. There's not as many walls coming through here. But these ones tend to drop off. I'll sometimes open it up and then I'll have unavailable. And there's a couple of ones in the kitchen that suddenly go into unavailable type thing. So what I'm ending up doing is I've just purchased a second Zigbee hub that I'm going to put with the Wi-Fi range extender there, so that I start covering these ones in this particular place through here. So hopefully that will give me the interconnectability range that I need to actually have all of those. So I've got a bulb in the porch. I think it's a Zigbee bulb, and I can't seem to connect it. It'll just work as a light. I can get it flashing. I can pair with a device, but it doesn't do anything. It just stays white. It's supposed to be coloured, and it just doesn't seem to work. So I've got a feeling that my Zigbee range is not quite meeting the need. So this is where I'm experimenting with this. And this is one of the things which I find it's almost like you're doing a little bit of sleuthing. Now, I just want to use an analogy of PCs and having devices that you connect into a PC. It's like you get a PC, or you get a thumb drive or a USB drive, or you get a webcam, or you get a new keyboard or an independent keyboard or a Bluetooth keyboard or something like that. And with the modern computers, it does this plug and play. It will go and look for a device manager or device driver that it needs for that particular thing, and it goes and installs it. In the old days, you used to have to go to the manufacturer's thing, go and look up the list of the actual ones, see what the latest driver was, copy the driver across. It might be some weird file that you had to be installed in a certain way through, you know, a run on your thing, and it had to be connected into your weird stuff inside your Windows. It was quite a complicated procedure, and now you just plug in. At the moment, I'm actually feeling like a lot of smart devices, they can do some really smart things, but there's a lot of fiddle factor with them, and this is what I was finding when I was trying to set up this Wi-Fi network. I got Wi-Fi, yeah, but the Wi-Fi you got doesn't work. because it chooses which band you want to be on. No, you can't do that. It can only work on the 2.4. So you then have to go and find an older device that only works on you can directly log in to the 2.4 gigahertz, and it doesn't jump you between the frequency. Oh, now I actually haven't quite got the distance to the other one, so I now read a RAID extender, or maybe I need to see if I can actually pair 3 routers together by putting another router at the other end of the building and stuff like that. So suddenly you're getting into a lot more complexities, and this is where a little bit of sleuthing. So the first one, I had to figure out why the things weren't connecting, because the phone kept on switching into the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection instead of the 2.4. So I had to force it, had to think about how to do that and force it onto the 2.4 one. And then I actually suddenly saying, well, I'm still getting drop off here because I have so many devices connected, and when I open up my computer and things like that, it's the other routers also using resources, and so that's actually slowing things and shrinking stuff down. So if I was to approach this again, I'd approach it from the point of view is the first thing I'd need to feel a certain amount of confidence over is that I actually have good Wi-Fi connectivity all the way through on the 2.4 gigahertz range. Now I know for things like offices and stuff, you can actually get these repeaters all the way through and to do some quite powerful things, but that's more commercial. My one experience with the mesh one has not really ended up being. It's a great router, and it's great for my computers and things. I just find it's not particularly good for my smart home. I'm very, very pleased with the Zigbee setup, and again, I quite like the fact that you can get plugged-in devices to increase. So that's why I'm quite keen to get this second sub-hub and connect it over here. Now this is the other thing that I just want to demonstrate through at this point, which is and it's a thing with Tuya, it's the way Tuya works, but I think a lot of them, they all work the same way, is if I just go into the setting, let's just see if we can do it through there. No, he's thinking about it, this one, he's having a bit of a dozy day. We'll go into settings, and if we go into devices and things, I've got the Tuya add-in, and then I've got the local Tuya add-in. So if we just go into the Tuya add-in here, we're thinking about it. We've got 23 devices, and we've got 53 entities. Now some of them, I don't know why, it's sort of done weird connections like this, but and if we look at this device here, sorry, one thing I've forgot to mention. The first device, the first smart device I got was, let's just jump back to that one, was in fact a little fingerbot. It's a little box, it's actually a lot smaller than that, but it just has this rod that just pushes up and down. So if you put it over a light switch, it'll turn it on and off. Well, as long as it's if it's a button, so it'll turn on and off. And my idea was that I would be able to turn the hot water cylinder on and off. So that was a Bluetooth device. So this little finger pop was a Bluetooth one. So I paired it up. I downloaded the app, paired it up with that, and said, okay then, fingerbot down, fingerbot up, fingerbot down, fingerbot up. All wonderful. I then went out of the house for a walk or something, and when I came back, it had unpaired. So the Bluetooth pairing needs to be in reasonably close proximity. So when I took the phone out of the house, it broke the connection. So when I came back, I had to reconnect to the fingerbot. And in the end, I thought, well, that's no bloody use to me, because every time I go out of the house, I've disconnected, so I can't use it to turn or turn off the hot water thing. So what a silly device. I didn't have any understanding of this. But now find, because this is Tuya and Bluetooth, I purchased Zigbee ones, which are Tuya and Zigbee. And Tuya is not necessarily the manufacturer. You can get a lot of different manufacturers who use the Tuya protocol, and then there's also a Zigbee protocol as well. And so, but a lot of Bluetooth devices will connect with Zigbee. So Bluetooth devices and Zigbee, they're pals. So you've either got the Wi-Fi or the Zigbee to Bluetooth, but the Bluetooth need a hub to connect to. So that's just something to do. Now I ended up with this complicated thing of trying to, so here's an example of that, sorry. So coming back to my previous before I digress. I've got 23 devices here. So if I go into here and just do a reload, it'll just go up to your cloud and say, hey, what you got for me? And it'll say, hey, you've got 23 devices and they're sending me 53 streams of stuff. And so when you see on this thing here, this is sending the temperature every 10 minutes, it's sending the humidity every 10 minutes, and it's sending the battery level every 10 minutes. So it's sending 3 lots. So that's where it says the device, one device has 3 entities. So this is where we've got 23 devices with entities. So they all have certain things that they can do. So that's it. But if we go and look at those devices now, and here's all the devices, you'll see this thing unsupported, unsupported, unsupported. Then you've got a bit of gibberish. So this one here is supported. So it's a smart plug through there. And then as you come through, this one's here has actually got a code through here. This is something I've been suspicious about. I don't think this is a Zigbee socket. I've got a feeling, and if it is a Zigbee socket, it's actually paired to the Wi-Fi. So this is the one that confused me. So all of these other ones unsupported means that they're connected with the Zigbee device. So when we get to the Zigbee hub, you'll see it's actually got unsupported because that comes in to the local Tuya integration, which says I've only got 4 devices. What devices have you got? Well, I've got the plug for the living room thing, which I thought was a Zigbee plug. I'm still trying to figure this one out. And then I've got the Zigbee hub, and I've got the Wi-Fi digital meter, so that's reading my power meter. And I'm not too sure what this one here is doing, because it's just a standard sensor like that. So it should be inside of the Zigbee hub. In fact, it is, but I don't know why it's fighting out here. But I can't seem to be able to delete it. And that one there actually has a battery, but it's not identifying it. Anyway, you have your Tuya account, which you log into and you give your own data to, and then it goes up and in the magic of the cloud, it goes through and gets all the devices and does magical things through there. But then you need a developer Tuya account, which has all of the codes with it. So inside here, I can go through for the Tuya one, and I can do a Tuya. This is this Python tiny Tuya wizard, and if I run this one through here, it's just kind of, that's the connection details and stuff. You know, if you really want to come and brutalize my stuff, that's what you're doing. Now it's actually polling. It's gone through to the cloud. It's found all the data for the cloud. It's actually writing it to one of these scripts through here, and then it's checking each device. So it's polling it here to see whether they're live or not, and getting all the information off them and saying hurrah. So when we actually get all of these, and whoops, I want to scroll through, you will see that my bedroom 2 blinds is that there's no IP found, bedroom 2 socket, no IP found, or bedroom socket, no IP found. Bulb back porch, that's got an IP address, so that means that's a Wi-Fi. Hall light, that's a Wi-Fi one because it has its own IP address. All these other ones, the temperature and humidity and the sensors and all of those, nada, no IP. So they're connecting in with the hub. So they're all connected to the Zigbee hub, and which has an IP address, and so does the digital meter. So that's the digital meters talking to the Wi-Fi, and then the bedroom light and a plug, and the porch light is not as well. So that's just written some script stuff, but I actually want to go and use my second one, which is the scan, which gives us that. So that's going through and polling all of these things through here. And then I'll just do this and get this run through, and then we'll demonstrate something through here. Actually, I'm going to leave that as it is. So what do I need to do here? No, so I come back into here and I go configure. So if I go and edit a device, and if I submit, and if we just say this one here, submit that one as stuff. What's your name? What is your IP address? What's your local key? So that's basically a password. And it's usually asking some other things. So we don't actually need any of those. So let's just submit it and let it do. Now we just go. Now if we come back again and do, if we come back and do another configure there, and we just do the edit and we submit something and we just say the Zigbee hub, just shows us the Zigbee hub with its little bits of stuff. Now it actually says what the protocol version is. So the Zigbee protocols are slowly being modified and improved to do some other things through there. Now if I go and I configure and I add a new device, says what's its name, so maybe it's my sensor, it's a PIR or it's one of these sensors through here, temp humidity sensor. It says what's your host? Well, the host is the Zigbee hub address, so that's the 192.24. And then it says what's the device ID? You sort of think, how the hell should I know that? All of that's being hidden up in the cloud, so you need the developer's account to actually get that. And what's your local key, which is your password, and what protocol version is this particular app? And you're suddenly thinking, I have not a damn clue about it. So this is where this nice little Python script comes through and does this. So if I just type Zigbee through here, and if I just go and find Zigbee, I've got the Zigbee socket, and then I've got the Zigbee hub. And then if I go sub, this says, now that, where's Zigbee? No, we've gone through. This is the other one. Let's just do that sub again, and then we go, if we go sub true, that means that they there's 16 of them which are sub Zigbee. So there's the main Zigbee hub and there's 16 things which are subservient to it or sub connected to those. So I'm actually going to find just on the vid, come back. If we go false to that one, and it's most probably going to need a capital F, and if we go to the one-to-one and then let's go and find it, this is the oh no, how come I've got, so this one here is actually the curtains, and they're not a sub one, they must have their own. I find that's a bit strange, so I'm not quite sure what that happens. But to a certain extent, if it's false, it's like the Zigbee hub is not a sub one of it. It's not a subservient of the main one. It is the main one. So the only way that I found that, I need to explore this a bit more. So Zig, and here's the Zigbee hub one. And if we go further down onto here, it tells us what version we're using of the scripts that we're using. And I think it works the other one. And I think somewhere it should give the IP address for that one as well, because it has a specific IP address. By the look of it, it's right at the very beginning. There's a lot of so whereas the Wi-Fi router has all of the things individually connecting to the router each time, so if this is Wi-Fi, this has got a direct link to the Wi-Fi. For this thing here, this has to connect to the Zigbee hub, so it has to send the information to the Zigbee hub, which sends it to the router, which then sends it up to the cloud, which then comes down from the cloud and sends. But well, it's not sending back to here. But if I actually have a Zigbee plug that is a sub of this, then if you want to turn the switch on, you'd go into your Home Assistant, which would come through to the Zigbee. Where would it go? Which would go back to the 2U1, which would come down to the router, which would then go to the Zigbee hub, which would then go to the switch and say turn on or turn off. So that's one of the things. So the Zigbee and the Bluetooth, so far I've actually only been playing with Bluetooth devices which have been both 2U ones, so therefore they seem to connect with the Zigbee one. So I don't know if I go out and purchase another device, a Bluetooth one that is not 2U, whether it would actually connect to the Zigbee, although it should, because it should actually have that protocol. So there's, as I said, there's a few different protocols in there. There's another one called Matter, which is supposed to be another overarching sort of protocol that you can program your things to. But what my big takeaway from this is, if you are looking to do any of this sort of stuff, and where are we? There we are. If you are looking to do any of this stuff, and like if you're going to have a couple of things in the smart devices out in the garden, you may have to go to LoRa to do that, which is long range. Don't know. You can connect via other things, but it's a sort of a long range thing, so that you're not on Wi-Fi. You're away from the Wi-Fi and you can connect to something outside. But it's usually for these little microprocessors that you've got to do with those sorts of things. But if you've got a few things like a garden watering sprinkler system that you may have a tap against the wall or something like that, you need to trigger some of those things. Just make sure the first thing that you need is good Wi-Fi coverage, and then if you're going to go with the Zigbee ones or Zigbee devices, because you suddenly think I just want a few sensors around the place, make sure that you've got your Zigbee hubs and sub-hubs in locations such that you've got a good distribution all the way through. As I said, I'm sort of fumbling through this. Something doesn't quite work, then I actually have to go and explore different variations. If I move it closer, if I do it, why is this one working and that one not working? Why is this dropping off? Why is that one doing that? And you can see at this point in time, it's actually dropped off here again. So that is actually just saying it's not running, although that's saying it is. So don't know why that is. No, it's still. This is here, but we're not getting the latest stuff. So this is one of the things that I've had unavailable current through there. So something's dropped off. Maybe it's starting to get, well, it's after 5 o'clock, so a lot of people are coming home, turning off, so the whole broadband thing ends up dropping off a little bit. So do make sure you do that if you're going on to this. If you've got the mesh things, that could cause a problem, you know. And I had to go through and do an awful lot of sifting to find out all of this. So planned again, I would actually make sure I had bloody good coverage for my Wi-Fi first off, and then I do the thing. But since I'm doing things a little bit ad hoc, and maybe that's the thing as well. If you're going to do things ad hoc, you know, that's fine as well. Just don't spend too much money on it to begin with. And again, the second take home that I would like you to have is the Zigbee and how it works really well with the sensor, because they're low powered ones. So the Zigbee is good for the low power. The Wi-Fi is good, but if the Wi-Fi is talking to everything directly, you know, it's chewing up a bit of your band that you're actually using as well. And just make sure that that they work. And again, you've got to go through this sort of like detective things, and you've got to go and purchase a couple of devices to, you know, and that's why I purchased a second hub to see if that's the reason why my bulb in the porch is not working there. And it sort of bothers me that it just doesn't say, you know, I've got an extra extended Wi-Fi still not connecting, then I've got to do this, then you've got to take it away and do it, and do things. So at the moment I've sort of got the initial setup, and I feel as if I've got enough power around, you know, and to a certain extent, you know, I haven't spent that much. You know, I had an existing router, I had an existing extender, and foolishly I was having problems setting up that extender, and I ended up buying another extender, which I would have spent the money on something better. But I've got that, and I might actually push that over here just to make sure that it extends my 2.4G network so that I can have more sensor devices and things at this end, because I think the sensors only work. They don't quite work into the outer wall and into this corner over here. They tend to work over here, but not over here. So that might just be an extra bit of something, and maybe I might need another Zigbee hub or sub-hub to work through there. So thanks very much for watching. I hope that's been of use to you. I must admit, if somebody else had told me that earlier on, it would have saved a bit of pain on my part. The next one, I'll go into some of the devices and start looking at them, and some of the connections and some of the issues with them that I find through there. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give a thumbs up. If not, op pan ya ha.